Okay, so we're live. I'm going to do a very short live stream, and just full disclosure, my kid has a cold, and so he might be calling me to leave. My wife's taking a nap, and then sister-in-law is talking with a friend and stuff like that. So I might be in and out during the stream, but my goal is to try to stream as often as I'm working on comics, and I want to finish inking this panel. This is Two Stories Book 2 that I'm working on. If you guys are at all curious about what I'm working on and what kind of comics that I make, I'm a cartoonist, and my first book, Two Stories Book 1, is a very confessional graphic novel that talks about my journey dealing with depression and sort of navigating mental illness, and also caregiving for somebody with panic disorder and what panic disorder looks like, as well as like childhood memories. And as heavy as the topic is, it's definitely not for kids. It's actually pretty enjoyable as a read, I hope. So there's that. And then also I have my upcoming graphic novel, Jacob's Apartment, which I finally got advanced reader copies for, which you can pre-order at graphicmundi.org, and will be out in stores on June 2022. And I'm just going to stream. And again, if anyone shows up, cool. If no one shows up, that's fine too. It's a midday stream. I usually do these at night. So it's always kind of a strange thing navigating. Let me double check my audio levels too, just to make sure everything's good. Perfect. It seems like everything's good. So I'm going to basically just work on inking this. And then when I'm done, I will probably go so I can feed my dogs and all that kind of stuff. Get that going. I really actually enjoyed the live stream yesterday a lot. And I've been enjoying live streaming in general. And it's fun to get kind of back on the horse of it, I guess you could say. But yeah, like yesterday was interesting, where I actually had to go by a couple of stores and start the process of trying to organize some signings, and it seems pretty good. So what was nice about that is I got contact info for different people at the stores that would organize such a thing, and then gauge their level of interest, which so far it seems like two of them, 2 out of the 3 are interested. 3 out of the 3 were actually interested. 2 out of the 3 are actually doing signings. 1 is not because of COVID. So not bad odds for a day, but like it was a little long because one of the a little bit of a long trek. I thought I was going to live stream later in the day, and by the time I got home, let's see, I left here around 4, and by the time I got home, it was like 9 o'clock or something like that. So I ended up kind of opting to sleep so that today I could get a lot of work done. So my goals today are to kind of finish inking this panel that you might have seen me start on the last stream. And then what I'd like to do tonight is I need to send those contacts to my that I made to my publisher so they can get some signings organized, which I'm really excited about. And then outside of that, I'm just going to basically be working on press releases and stuff like that. And my other hope is, I think during this stream, I'm going to finish hopefully inking this panel. So it'll probably be a shorter stream. And then I think I'll stream longer tonight where there's less distractions and less possibility of me being pulled in like different directions and needing to kind of disappear to take care of different obligations or whatever, which isn't too bad. So we'll see how this goes. This is an interesting part in the story, and it's been a little tough to navigate. Jake, is it night for you? Jake just joined us in the chats, and he just said night gang with a question mark. What time of day is it for you, man? So let's see here. Let me get this moving. So I'm hoping to kind of get this inked, and then I'll ink the other panel probably at night during night gang, I guess, kind of times, which will be like more of my standard stream. 10 p.m. or 10 a.m., dude? Because right here it's like midday, so it's like 1:30. So this is like more like afternoon gang, I guess. We're a gang that's going to get very easily caught doing what we're doing. Because it's during the day as opposed to night. I don't know. I'm here all night, folks. Wow, PM. Well, Jake, if you want to hop on, man, just chat. More than down. I will say I'm pretty bored of talking about NFTs at this point. If anybody's watched the streams, the last like 2 or 3 have long, very long and informative conversations about NFTs, but I'm kind of over that discussion now. A lot to think about and process, but man, whew. He said, sure, no NFT talk. All right, well, I'll hop on. I'll have you hop on. And if you wanted to talk NFTs, that's fine. I just, a little burnt on those. Hang on. Let me send you a link real quick. Cool. So I think Jake got the link, so we'll probably be joined by Jake Tvister in a little bit. And we're just going to kind of work on comics. And again, it's probably going to be like a relatively short stream. And I might have to disappear at different points during the stream just to kind of course, make sure if my son needs anything, I got his back. So what's fascinating is I think through doing this, people might see why I tend to stream at night, because there's a lot of obligations and things during the day. But I also really enjoy doing these streams while I work. So, and I think people are enjoying them so far. So there's that. Oh, all right. We got Jake. How you doing, man?
Hello, boss.
Boss. How you doing? You there? Oh no, I guess he just disappeared. Well, that's weird. We had Jake there. He said hello, boss, and then disappeared. So maybe. Oh, let's see if we got him again. You there?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Hi. The microphone just like went bananas for some reason. Yeah,
that's okay. It's funny. I was just thinking, like, I don't know if that was you or the microphone saying hello, boss, but I have had those moments where you're like buying something and somebody goes, thanks, boss. And you're like, wait, I don't know if that's like an okay or nice thing to call someone.
Why would it be? Is it like contextual? Like cultural contextual thing?
At least in the US, there's like this kind of way you can say boss to somebody that means like F you. It's like this weird, it's just, it's kind of like saying thanks, friend. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, like in the South, I would have like expected it to be like a term of endearment in a sense.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
so that's the weird thing is like there's definitely that too, where there's people just saying, "Hey, thanks, boss," like, or
yeah,
that's
but then there's like
boss.
that. Then there's like that connotation with like slavery and all that stuff too. So yeah, there's a lot of like usage over the years, and that's sort of like it has been like my kind of like interest just recently, like semantic shifts, like semantic drifting. I
Interesting.
don't know why, but I just like stumbled on it because I was getting really fed up with how people are like defining comics.
Yeah, defining comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
Uh,
understand that.
so I'm like trying to underline the in like an analysis that I'll be like publishing like later this year or probably next year
Okay.
about how the how like certain cultural like frameworks
Yeah.
sort of like conditions the word to be imposed upon and being used as a
Yeah.
form of like shorthand, because like when you're talking about comics, and this is like shooting straight from the hip without even having like asking you how do you do. I'm sorry, but uh, how people like use the word in a sense, like for me, it's the medium that's like the reference to the medium,
Oh, the
but
word comics.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
but for others, and then particularly with like a U.S. majority, it's usually in reference to superhero comics.
Yeah, it is a weird thing, and it's very myopic, and it is strange. Like I'm in the U.S., so technically, I've kind of grown up seeing a lot of the and being kind of trained in that form of like what a comic is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember it being really enlightening. Even the publisher I'm working with now, Graphic Mundi, that's like kind of putting out these books that are not by U.S. citizens, and like they're books that have already been published in their native languages and are easily not superhero books.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like tons of those. I mean, France has like this crazy variety of like auto bio that's been going on for years. Japan with like manga has like just I think it's like a genre thing, where it's
Yeah,
like
for
there's a there's a
for
weird fixation on a specific genre here that I don't quite understand.
yeah, essay manga or like
Yeah,
essay comics. Those have shot up immensely.
I think that's
Um,
brilliant. I mean, using the comic medium for essays actually just seems like a no-brainer, right? Like, because
yeah,
it's
and
like,
it's been around like in the manga sphere like since this like at least like late '70s into the
yeah,
'80s.
yeah,
Yeah, like the precursor to that was Gekiga, and then it shot over to like I manga
yeah,
from the I novel, and then it became sort of like its own like field. It became uh, autobio, but they kind of like folded in with essay. So essay manga is one field, and now essay comics uh, they've like sort of made its march into like the market, and I like it, but
yeah,
I get really uh, stoop. I get a little bit like tired of that direction too, because like autobio is got to have like a certain amount of like skill to narrate, and like narrating like the everyday life and all that stuff. It's quite hard to settle in for, because it's sort of like a diary, but it's like a
yeah,
memory diary, that you're trying to recapture or like put in a certain specific frame.
yeah. It's hard to sell too. Like, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
mean like to sell to people, because I think people generally enjoy reading other stories if you write them well,
Yeah.
But it's like trying to get a publisher to touch a memoir unless you're like a famous figure. Like if you're like I don't know, let's say you like were somebody who like won the Super Bowl or something, you could probably very easily sell an autobiographical work. But if you're like or you're like a known political figure or something like that. But it's like if you're just this guy or person, writing your story, it's hard to get people on board with that. So I definitely think I definitely think there's advantages to not doing autobio too. Outside of just they're kind of hard to do right. I don't even know if I do them right.
I can also agree with Frank in the chat. He says, I've seen too many comics that aren't superheroes, so I don't see comics as the US in the US as primarily supers, but there's that perception added first. Yeah, it's a give or take, really. It depends really on the age that you're raised in, like
Yeah.
comics wise, where like the market and distribution sort of were at that one point, a particular point in time. And a lot of the facets that really like makes that foundation for your tastes happens around like the younger years, especially like teenage years, because that's when you start like getting first contact with a lot of genres and you start to explore a lot.
Yeah.
And if you were like in the midst of like the 80s, you had a lot of variety, but you had to be like in the local comic shops to be in that specific place, sort of.
Yeah, and I think there's different golden ages too for different genres. I feel like right now we're actually in a pretty good place for comics expanding beyond kind of the superhero narrative.
Oh yeah, and then
like
there's
for
like
instance,
that.
go ahead.
No, you first.
Okay. So for instance, like yesterday, like I got my preview copies for my book Jacob's Apartment that's coming out in like June. And what I'm supposed to do with those is like go to there's two places I wanted to hit first, and then I'm going to much go to as many bookstores as I can kind of manage in the upcoming weeks until the release, right? Just to like book signings and stuff like that. But the first place I stopped was just like my local Barnes and Noble, and they were super interested, and they actually told me that their best-selling books at Barnes and Noble are graphic novels and manga.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, now this is like a weird thing where I feel like there's a lot of people I know in the US who think that like graphic novels are just doing terribly, but it's like at a bookstore I was just told they're the best-selling books at the store. So I'm like, by the manager. So I'm like, I don't know, like, and this is in like a very, like the area I live in isn't like the most literate section of California, so it's like, I can only imagine like that, I mean, obviously that's not like a proof, that's just like my own experience. Right. But I wasn't surprised to hear that is what I'm saying. And like,
No, but
you're
making an astute observation there. In that the market is shifting away from floppies, and concentrating more on the hardbound or more like treated physical copies that are a little bit like in length, or they got some girth, not in the page count but also in the content, and that is sort of the that's sort of like the shift that people do not want to adopt, in the sense if they have like built the habit that they're going to get like each installment in meal pieces. But to me, who's been raised on comics in a like different wholly different like culture, and like
I'm kind of curious to hear how it is there, with that.
And with like other fascinations like gaming and such, I don't see like floppy comics as a good investment, because it's more like a DLC, downloadable content for a video game. I mean, you still get like a complete set of like games of a game in a sense, but you have to collect the pieces for it to be like a complete thing, and that model is slowly is slowly fading away, because there are other competitive models that are not only in the physical space but also in the digital market, because people get content now for free. And I say content because it's not like art and comics, because it's not like collected, and there will be like a time where they can expand to getting that in the form of a fully collection, probably like with a full book.
Awesome.
Or omnibus or whatever, crowdfunded, or whatever book deal they get from like an agent, But that
Yeah.
all depends,
Yeah,
Uh,
it's interesting to me, but it's like also like I personally just as a consumer, and this might just be my age, but it's like I don't really buy a lot of floppies either. Like I don't buy like 24-page comics very often unless they're done by friends. Most of what I'll do is buy trades because it's like it's just more convenient. I get the whole story or a big chunk of story.
yeah,
I feel like comics are kind of moving where television is too, because even serialized television is moving away from like the sitcom and more towards like these kind of epic stories that are told in like mass installments. So, not like I don't know. So it's an interesting thing, but again, like I have nothing against floppy comics, but it's like I definitely I think there's an era right now that we're in where we're kind of at like a really good time, at least in the U.S. For collected trades that I don't think we've ever really had before.
yeah. That was sort of like outlined in an introduction to this book by Henry Jenkins called "Comics and Stuff." It sort
Huh?
of dibbles into this interview that Art Spiegelman did in
Nice.
2014 with another guy, and they said like their sort of like attention was that they had to go with a Faustian bargain of making collected and uh, trade paperback editions for comics being accessible, and not going for like the whole like piecemeal collecting thing, moving away from that culture.
Yeah,
Uh,
which is kind of neat because it's like I mean, and this is no diss against speculators because I think speculators are a huge part of the market, and I know there are speculators in graphic novels. Like I have graphic novels from like Chris Ware that like I bought for like $20, and every once in a while I'll look them up on Amazon or something, and they're going for like $500. I'm like,
mhm.
I'm not selling the books for $500, but there is a speculative market even in trades. But
And not only
but
that, but you'll see like later in probably 15 years, the whole like
yeah,
manga speculative bubble is going to come,
oh yeah,
especially pre pandemic,
oh yeah,
for a lot of the for first prints. Uh,
yeah,
there'll be there will be a lot of plywood who's going to who's going to collect dollars. I'm going to guarantee that, but that's only because of like a new consumer generation coming into the fray, and they start to like take it seriously, and then they start to invest.
yeah,
Um, the only problem there is that it's plywood,
yep,
it's pulp, and pulp have the disadvantage of yellowing out. So if you don't treat the manga right, you will be sitting with rotting money if you're going to like treat it that way. So
yeah.
treat your books well.
Yeah, it's nice to see manga like starting to I've also seen a movement there where they're starting to print on like better paper and better paper qualities and like kind of putting a little more attention into the covers and stuff. And that's not for all manga. They definitely have a system because manga is like kind of designed to almost be disposable,
Yeah,
just like early comics.
It's like the original comics. Yep.
Yeah, but it's
actually more closer to Penny Dreadfuls.
yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, Penny Dreadfuls and like pulps. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I think. Anyhow, I guess what I'm saying is like for me, it's really exciting to see like because when I was younger and I started getting into really indie stuff, for the U.S., which in like France would just be like mainstream. But it's like for the U.S., it was like this strange like underground stuff. Um, I had this like daydream in my head of like the idea of like there would be a point in time where comic books would be like sold at like bookstores. And we're in that time in the US. And so for me, that's really been an exciting thing to have happened like in my lifetime. And so like to me, I don't know, when people get very like dismissive of where the comics industry is at in the US, I always think of that and go like, are you guys not seeing like the like book numbers, you know? And then like I've heard people kind of discount it. Like I literally heard someone a while ago, but they were kind of discounting like Dogman as a comic. They were like, well, that's just a kid's thing. And I'm like, yeah.
Raina Telgemeier's books.
Yeah, and they discount those sometimes too. And it's like those are sequential, they're comics. I mean, they may not be comics you like, but they're comics. And
that's the issue with like that's the issue we're coming back to like that semantic drift.
Yeah.
And that people are so hyper fixated on the idea of a comic being that way.
Yeah.
But the market is now expanding so much to this degree that not only has the market expanded into bookstores, but also the content variety is way broader than it was before. And you don't have to go like searching around in back issue boxes to find like alt comics that are printed, because now they got like the opportunity to like be resold again as a form of like a agency deal, probably through Penguin Random House or whatever, HarperCollins, because a lot of like manga is published by the traditional book publishers. Vertical Ink is a manga imprint of Penguin Random House.
Yeah.
And
part of why they went there was like, you know, little like smaller companies at the time, like Viz, which is still a huge company, but you know, taking the risk to like, they were like, there's people who will read these, and then like all these giant publishers saw the sales numbers and were like, I mean, you don't even have to like, again, like, I mean, I know this is like not the most valid form of argument, but it's like all you have to do is walk through a bookstore at a time of day where like kids would be out of school, and you'll see 2 or 3 kids at least at like in the comic section, and they're not looking at the comics, they're looking at manga, and quite often sitting in the bookstore reading manga. It's like, it's a trip. It's like they're nowhere else in the store, just right next to the manga, you know?
Yeah.
So if you're like a giant publisher and you're not putting that out, like what kind of opportunity would you be missing out on, you know? Like, I mean, it's like a no-brainer. Like, of course, Penguin Random House and like these giant companies are going to be like, yeah, we need manga because that's the thing, you know?
Yeah, I went to my local library not that long ago, and they have a pretty big comic section and a very small manga section, but now it's almost equal or greater than the comic section.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think that's a bad thing. Interesting.
No,
I also think it's weird people even separate manga and comics, because I mean,
yeah, they're both comics.
Yeah,
manga are comics, but it's if you say Japanese comics, it's just easier to say manga.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, like I really love, and there's indie, you know, manga too that like, you know, and I think Jake, you and I have talked about it, you know, where it's like we talked about like A Drifting Life. I adore that book. And
Drone and Coralie have been pushing towards releasing a lot of the old classics. Not only from Yoshio Tatsumi, but Yoshiharu Tsuge is getting a fine treatment now with his collection of his works. They're printing with like high quality paper, bound, hardcover. It's all like class, and they're going like for a 7-book series or like installation, and it's a blast. Because they like got one of the female contributors for Garo, the Gekiga magazine. Done a full paperback collection of her works.
And I just want to throw in there too, for people who are fans of like indie underground American comics too, like Adrian Tomine did the lettering on A Drifting Life and a couple of the other books, and it's like, I mean, if you're familiar with Adrian Tomini's work, it's all hand lettered, and the guy can letter like a madman. So it's like it's also kind of nice because not only is the book treated well with like the cost put into it, but they actually have a cartoonist doing a lot of the translation and the lettering, which is like how it kind of should be, because there is that problem with like translations of manga too, where quite often they'll just kind of slap on type wherever, and it's not necessarily the best translation or the most artistic. So
I don't think so. It's sort of
continue this conversation. I got to disappear for a second.
For me, I think I've sort of seen a little bit more improvement on that field.
On the type?
In the lettering and the sound effects. A lot of the sound effects have they're either going for like one or two options. You got the original sound effects, and then you have like this translation beneath, like in the gutter, or you go for like a fully redrawn onomatopoeia on it. And that's nice. But as for how comics are sold nowadays, like Barnes and Nobles and all that, I would have been a happy cowboy going to these stores, just like to get the wider experience of that.
Okay, I hope I didn't miss anything cool.
No, I was just flirting about the thought of going to an American bookstore for once.
Oh yeah. If you ever do go to an American bookstore, the best one I've ever been to is in Portland. It's called Powell's Books, and it's my favorite bookstore that I've been to in the U.S. so far. It's like a 4-story bookstore, but they also have like this whole floor that's dedicated to like rare books. It's really cool. Although I will say I stopped by Vroman's bookstore in LA, and that's a really good indie bookstore. Yeah.
Keith
What are
Harper
bookstores
went to
like?
a bookstore recently.
Sorry, who?
Keith Harper,
Keith?
creator of Daily Rocker. He went to, I think, LA or Vegas. I'm not sure which one it was, but there's wherever Banksy is that in LA?
Yeah, Banksy
Joshua,
would be in LA. Yeah.
So he went to this bookstore that used to be a bank, so it was converted into a bookstore, and he showed like all these pictures. So there's like a section of the I forget what genre in an old vault.
Huh.
So it's aesthetically looking is very awesome, and there's a section, or he went to a museum that's like close by of Banky's stuff. So it looked very, very cool, very interesting. So that will be a bookstore I would like to check out one day.
That's cool. So is that on his YouTube or something? Because I kind of
it's on his Facebook. He posted pictures.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna check that out.
So it'll have the name there. I just can't think of it at the top of my head.
Yeah, it sounds really rad. I wonder. I don't think that's the Lost Bookstore or whatever.
I think it is.
Okay, because did it have
the last bookstore? Yeah,
did it have like an entryway that was like a wall of books?
It might have. He didn't post everything.
Circular wall of books. Okay. Well, anyhow, there's some really good bookstores in LA for sure. What are the bookstores like where you're at, Jake? Like, I'd imagine.
Don't get me started.
Are they bad?
Yeah, you could probably say that it's chain run, sadly.
Oh, okay. So it's like Barnes and Nobles out here then.
So, there's some like that here.
Are they big though? Like, do they have a decent selection?
It depends, really, and a lot of it's servicing like not just books, because they're like diversified into selling like puzzles. And,
that's pretty.
Kids'
standard.
toys and like office supplies and stuff.
Okay.
So it services a lot of like different
like a
things.
Walmart.
No, not exactly like a Walmart, because all of these stores are really small, you know.
Tiny
Yeah.
Walmart.
So like the diversified sections there is not as great. Like you could probably count one or two shelves with like an English pocket edition translation thing.
Okay.
Got it.
Uh,
So how do you obtain your books then? Out of curiosity, like where do you go to get your books?
uh,
In the
my
back
book books
alleys.
or my comic books?
Your comics.
Um, there was three possible ways I did that. It was my primary spot. The net the bookstore online that I perused on. They had
Okay.
like stores, but they downscaled because they were going like in the really deep negatives with when it came to their chain. So instead, they focused all of their efforts into like the net. Uh, it had like the best customer experience, the best spot to find cool and rare and a lot of like weird books,
Yeah,
like books that you wouldn't have probably seen for like 15 years or so. They got it. That's
that's
sort of like
awesome.
to think that they had like orders in stock for it, and if they didn't, they just like ordered from some place I don't know where, and
Oh
they got
wow.
it. Like one of the rarest books that I got is this Carl Jung book. And it's a misprint. So half of the book is upside down, and the binding is not right to left, but left to right.
That's
Okay.
Oh,
that's
that,
gotta
that
have some
that's
value
right.
actually.
No, right to left. Sorry, that's the binding. So like, do you have like one page? Take for example, page 18 is on the right side, and page 19 is on the left side. So you have to read like ordinarily, but you're reading the pages backwards. It's so fucking confusing.
I was
But
gonna say Young is kind of heavy sometimes to understand when bound correctly. So I
yeah,
could
but this
imagine
is a
that being
nightmare
really,
of a
yeah, I
misprint.
was like trying to like parse through a puzzle of taking what's already a hard to digest.
Hmm.
That's great.
But
That's got to have some value though, I'd imagine.
that's
If
what I
it's like a
thought when I
misprint.
got it too. Like it must have some sort of like value at least. But that shop closed during COVID, and I was so
So
distraught. I
Yeah.
was so taken aback by that I flipped out. Now I couldn't order my comics in time, and the shortage was at like the beginning of it because it was hard to like get books, and now the shortage is in full swing, and that store is gone. So I'm relying on the LCS now, which is a chain run LCS. But
Okay.
if I want to get my true indie comics, I have to go to my mom and pop LCS
Yeah.
to find the good shit, concrete and some older prints of Will Eisner and Seth and what's the cat name? I don't remember the author, but I picked up A History of Violence, that graphic
Fritz the
novel.
cat.
No,
That's an amazing, amazing comic.
yeah, I really dig it. And the original print for it too, which was awesome. And I bought the whole like Ted McKeeves collection at a discount, which was really nice because they've been just sitting there for like 3 years without pushing. So I took him off his hands, and I've been really digging his like underground stuff.
Huh. I don't know if I'm familiar with Ted McKeefe.
Have you heard of Transit or Metropole 4?
Oh, okay. Oh, he did that.
Yeah, and Eddie Current.
Oh man. Okay. See, now I have to check that out. I'm gonna have to look into that myself because you mentioned those, and I'm like, they all are things that I have heard of multiple times and I've never checked out. So, uh, worth it? Would you say?
I would say it's a very like subjective taste because his ink work
Uh
is
huh.
mainly why I bought him. and the hardbound collections, because they're hardcovers by Image. Um, yeah, because he ran like a collection or a reprint collection of it,
Got it.
like 2007, 2009. I've been enjoying them so far, and I
Nice.
picked up Mondo, which was his latest comic before he like went under the radar, because he's sort of like an artist type, not a
Yeah.
comic books type. So he often like ducks out of the public light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Watterson.
I actually
Yeah.
understand that. It's funny. I was talking to Adam about that like a couple days ago too, where Watterson is so respectable, but it's also one of those things of like you wonder some like and this comes from somebody who like admires the hell out of Watterson, but I always wonder if he would have ducked out of the light as often had he not been being syndicated by like such a massive syndicate that was able to kind of take a lot of that marketing off the table, like for because like I mean there were like 3 syndicates running. It's funny, it sounds like a mob movie or something, but they were called syndicates, and they were running basically the newspaper strip industry. And so like all you had to do for a specific genre of comics, especially if you wanted to do syndicated strips and newspapers, you'd get in with like the syndicate, and if you got in, you were set. I mean, you were instantly in at a minimum. Like a low syndication would have been like 200 newspapers. And I mean, so your job at that point is just hustle and then occasionally like take an interview or something. And then if you're a rock star, you don't have to do anything, just make the strip, So it's one of those things of like, I tend to think Watterson would have been always kind of held integrity, just considering the crazy amount of money he turned down. But I also do think he probably would have been self-promoting more had he had to. I don't know if that makes sense.
Do you think this is just speculation at this point? If he had to self-promote more and just knowing how he was with the limelight, that he probably wouldn't do it as much, or that he would do it more?
No, I think he did. I mean, I think he did when he needed to. Because you'll notice, like in his history too, he did a lot more interviews early on when he was first starting
That's
Calvin
true.
and Hobbes. The second Calvin and Hobbes became like legendary, that's when he kind of, I mean, don't get me wrong, he never was like heavy in it, but I feel like he kind of pulled back later, which honestly I think a lot of cartoonists would do. Like I have a feeling I'd probably pull back a little bit if I didn't need to promote,
Yeah, like
sort of like
for me
makes
too.
sense.
Like I promote others and I'll promote myself. But if I don't have to promote myself, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be great if like the work was just selling itself, and then you could just kind of focus on the work? Or if you're doing like a promotion thing, do it to just like hang out and I mean, to me, I think
and that the name carries it for you rather than the artist's name.
Right? Yeah. I think that's where I don't know. I think a lot of us would like to be there, But then again, it is fun, like I enjoy meeting people. So like conventions are really fun if you like meeting different personalities and stuff.
Yeah. Like I met Mike Grell at a local con here. And it was before that con started taking off, so it was just like a mini con that a little shop put on. But he was able to get Carlo Barberi and Mike Grell, and those were like the 2 big names, and I was able to just go there and hang out with them and talk to them. And it wasn't like, oh, like sign your book and go. Like you could hang out there at the table, and have random conversations. So
and actually,
Carlo Barberi about waking up in the morning and when your hair looks like Wolverine. Like this is like a little conversation I had with someone that in the biz, and like I wouldn't have been able to have that before. Nowadays, I don't know if I could have just a random conversation. It was just like next.
Well, it's interesting because like it depends on who, but like I will say,
The
like
artist?
just having
The
been
painter?
on, yeah, it depends on who the artist is. But I can say like, I mean, so I could see where like if somebody's like Neil Gaiman famous, where like they do a signing
Yeah.
and like there's
They
a,
just
a
sign and
line like a mile long behind
yeah,
you,
yeah. And
then
there
in
wasn't like
those cases,
lines like that.
yeah, in those cases I could understand an artist being kind of like, hey, we got to kind of move this line, you know.
Yeah.
But I will say at like most conventions I've been at, like you kind of do the artist a favor by hanging by the booth a little bit, because
Because it's like,
like,
oh, who's this guy?
yeah,
Like
because
if they
like
don't know the name.
there's convention psychology that I can't even understand, but it's like if somebody walks by a booth that has people at it, they want to buy stuff from that booth. And I think it is that perception of like, oh, this has to be like the cool place to be, you know?
Yeah.
Isn't it
So
sort of like
That
go on? No, you, Frank.
also that reminds me of a story I heard this celebrity say a talk show, and it's a UK celebrity, but she came to the US, and she went to a mall, so no one knew her, but there was like a couple of people that recognized her and went up to her and asked her for an autograph. Other people saw that, and so there was like a line forming, and this was just she was just like walking along buying stuff. And so the celebrity was like wow, like all these people know me. And then once she asked the other people, like, oh, you know me? No, but I saw this name, so I saw this line, so I figured you're someone famous. Can you sign this? Who are you?
yeah, it's just a really weird thing. What were you gonna say, Jake?
Yeah. Sorry,
Well,
I can interrupt.
is it sounds like organic interaction, but also organic exposure, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that it has like it has an effect on people, or like a crowd of people, crowd psychology at least,
Mm-hmm.
that someone just by sticking around a little bit uh, can do favors for you, or pull favors for you,
Yeah,
even
I
though
mean,
it's not.
I've definitely been at cons where like somebody's like apologetic having a conversation with me, and meanwhile I'm making more sales because they're there. So I'm like, no, like, dude, like, I mean, beyond just like I enjoy talking to people, but it's also like
Yeah.
I feel bad for them feeling bad because I'm like, you're actually helping me out. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's actually very helpful. You want to stay
Yeah.
there for like an hour and talk, you know, like that's even better, you know. And also it keeps me entertained because like, dude,
Yeah.
conventions are boring as hell if no one talks to you, you know. So like it's fun to meet people. I mean, that's half of why we all do cons, you know. That's like if I got to like a really famous level where I didn't have to do conventions, that's the one part that might make me still do conventions is like I really do enjoy meeting. There's something unique about like the experience of like so many people with a common interest, like getting in
Yeah.
the same building and like I don't know, there's like an energy to it, you know. It's fun.
I can't wait to go to a con where you're there, Josh. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, dude. I want to do. It would be fun to do something in Texas.
Oh, yeah. I definitely go. I was like, oh, Josh Kemble's here in Texas. Uber, take me.
Well, we'll have to see if we can get that going. I mean, I like right now. It seems like the only con I might do is TCAF, so in Toronto.
Uh, that is uh, like that's one of the cons I want to, or like that's one of the places I want to go to a con, like in somewhere in Canada, just because I'm a big fan. Like I like Canada, I like the culture, but I've never been there, so that would be like a dream for me to not just
Yeah,
visit it, but to go to a convention there
yeah,
and just see everything.
yeah. I mean, it'll be fun if. I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll get in because I think that the publisher I work with is pretty
Connected.
cool with the owners and stuff. But like,
Okay.
who knows? But yeah, I mean, assuming that happens, like, yeah, I'll definitely be
I'll be
there.
up.
And then I'm hoping to do more other ones, but I just kind of have to spread them out wisely, you know, because I don't want to like deplete all my resources just to like
Yeah.
do a million conventions, you know.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind looking into ones in Texas either, especially if they're in Austin. I'd be like all about that. I know that's
There,
not necessarily next to your spot,
yeah.
but you know.
There's one. I think there is one in Austin, and there's also one in Dallas. The Dallas Fort Worth area. You know Richard Dominguez? He's a friend of Javier Hernandez.
I don't, but if
Okay,
he's a
well,
friend of Hav, then I would consider him a friend of mine.
he does the comic El Gato, and I probably mentioned this on one of our shows or something, but he's actually from my area. Like he's from my town.
Oh, cool.
He's from this little area. So and when he started putting out his book, it was a black and white comic book. I was still in high school and I saw it in the newspapers, but when I saw like the actual book, like, oh, it's black and white, like I don't really like this because especially down here in this area, if a comic was like that black and white, it was usually like a romance novel type of thing. And I'm like, I don't want to read this. I would read these that my mom had, but like some of them were almost pornographic or violent. They're very adult. So like, this is interesting me, but now like later, hey, I wanna find this book because I think it's cool. That it was someone from my area that got into the newspaper, and now I think they live or they go to Dallas more often, so they have a bigger presence over there. But I remember
Dude.
I bought the collected edition. I think it was like the first 4 issues because I was looking that up on Amazon, and I contacted him on Instagram and I posted the book, and he told me, "Hey, can you show this book to?" And he mentioned this comic book store here, and like, yeah, you know what, I'll do a post and I'll tag them in. I don't know if they ever saw it or responded, but it is a local shop here, so I think next time I go in, I might think about, hey, have you seen this? Like,
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that about black and white comics because I definitely had a similar thing when I was younger where I would like look at like a black and white comic and be like, oh, this is only black and white. And I think Bone was the first one to change my mind on that. I have to disappear again. My son is calling me, so I'll be right back, you guys.
Okay. All right. I might leave soon, but I still have some time.
Yeah. I mean, are we in a black and white boom again, you think, Frank?
I think we're starting to get back in there again, especially with the indies and the type of indies that we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing like a lot of black and white, and you're seeing that again. I really like black and white now. So I've been buying some. The guy that did the Crow, so I bought his special edition. I think I mentioned to you.
Yeah. Bar.
So I like how that looked, like just the art of it, and also the old Ninja Turtles. I bought a collected volume.
Yeah.
I didn't like the recolored. So like I want to go for the black and white because I want to see how it actually is supposed to look in its original form. So.
Yeah, for me, the first black and white one was like that got me really into black and white comics was actually Bone by Jeff Smith back when Cartoon Books was putting him out.
Cool.
And I think like maybe Sin City was being published around that time too. So those were like probably the two first like black and white books that were like intentionally black and white, where I was like, oh, okay, this like is better, you know. But it took a while to like, you know, kind of. I remember even I think buying the first because I didn't get Bone when they were floppies, but I bought the Cartoon Books trade like when he first self-published like a trade of like collections 1 through 6 or whatever, or 1 through 9, and yeah, and I remember having this like moment of hesitance because I like looked at the first page and I was like, well, this isn't color, you know, because I was a kid, you know, but then like once I like cracked it open, I was like, oh, I actually like that this isn't color. But it is funny. Like I definitely, it's one of those things too. Like if somebody's doing indie comics, and they're doing it for kids, I always recommend that they try to do them in color because it's like kids do prefer color. you know.
Yeah, it's with Captain Gauss and Masked Woman. I mean, it's black and white, and we're gonna do the graphic novel in black and white. But Anna comes up with these very colorful characters that I kind of want to do not the whole thing, but like maybe like a standalone issue or a special like a holiday edition that is in color, just so you get the full uh like what it's supposed to look like in color. Because like, I can do a Christmas story and like, well, there's no green, there's no red, everything looks drab. So, so like I want to do something in color to just kind of showcase these characters Anna's been doing because she puts a lot of color in them.
Yeah.
What about an annual though?
An annual? Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, something like that. Yeah, something like that. It's only once a year. And like a special thing, special edition in color. Because color does take a while. Because I like color, but like to go back and do it all in color. And then someone was telling me to, oh, do them both at the same time. And like that is so confusing, so time consuming. And if I,
Oh yeah, flattening is the
and if my goal is to, I want you to be able to get it, and like, and then it takes me twice the time to do it, and you're by that time it comes out, you're like, oh well, I don't care, like, because it's not even a big name. It's just like a little thing that I'm doing, so it's not even like a series. So like, no, I want to get my book out.
Yeah.
So what about you, Jake? Like, were you more familiar with like black and white books, or when you were younger, were you like way more drawn to like color?
My sort of like phase with comics as growing up for like ages 4 to 10 was marred with a lot of color, not a lot of black and white, but it was mostly like strip based comics and other types of like shorter works. But it was sort of like given that Donald Duck had to be printed in color because it's it's sort of like vibrant. But I think like the first black and white that I really got into was ElfQuest.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they released like pocket editions of ElfQuest when I started, I think about fifth, sixth grade. And they ran for about like 2 years before they had to like cut it off because of low sales. So it ended like a little bit in the middle of like the What Now Dark Horse has published like volume 4, I think, volume 5. So I know the story still continues after that stopping point, but I never picked up the series again. So I'm considering getting the omnibuses for that series.
Yeah. That actually, it's funny, even you mentioning ElfQuest, I'm like, I have not read that in a long time. And I know it, I think it is still continuing. So it'd be fun to...
Yeah, the last
it'd be fun to
story.
see, like... Yeah, it'd be fun to see if it holds up, too. I haven't read that in a while. So I'm like, is it still as good as I remember? Like...
In some areas it lapses, and in others it really holds up. Like the especially like the romance angle, I think holds up.
Yeah, nice.
And I really like the whole like Exodus part of it when they got to like a point where they had to be like driven out of their home territory, the Wolf Riders. But as soon as I like opened that can of worms, it coincided also with like the manga boom here, because the publishers here started to translate, localize the manga into Norwegian and Danish and Swedish, and
so did that happen like kind of coinciding with the boom here? Like, was that just like a global boom, or?
No, for you guys, you had manga like way before that, like in the late 80s into the 90s with imprints.
Because I remember manga, seeing it as a kid, but not really being that into it. And there was also you could go to like places in Mexico or just like more local Mexican areas where you could buy manga or hentai was probably like translated into Spanish.
Yeah.
And that was another thing, like when I would see like black and white comics, like oh, it's all porn. Like I want to see
Yeah,
that.
for us, this was like the real sort of like cultural invasion of manga.
Yeah.
First round of it. We there is sort of like in the because I was looking this up actually because I want to cover the manga boom. I really want to cover the manga boom in like a detailed interview and exchange and like coverage for
Nice.
late. And I sort of like started to dig around a couple of weeks ago, and I found that um, Barefoot Gen was translated once and sold here by this now defunct publisher like forever ago. But it was one of the first mangas that made it across over here, and then they started like the really like the real push, like One Piece, Dragon Ball, Love Hina, all of the like titles that we know like
Yeah.
from 2000 Shonen and Shoujo series like Card Capture Sakura, Inuyasha, Ram
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shaman King, all of these series cropped up, and Naruto, of course. And around like 2010, it died, just like that.
Wow.
Okay.
It's like
Huh.
it was such like an influx into like this market because it was in kiosks, it was in stores like grocery stores, it was
Yeah.
everywhere, like that small section of like pockets
Mhm.
along with the other comics, and then
Yeah.
suddenly poof, just gone.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I have really enjoyed this conversation. I hate to call it, but
Oh,
Okay.
this is going to be one of the shorter streams because
Oh,
it's a
okay.
midday one, and my goal here was to get through this one panel. And what I'm going to do is feed my dogs, and check on the kid and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And I'm probably going to be streaming later though, so if you guys are around later, I'd love to continue this because what a cool conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm about to head off for church, so I probably won't
Awesome.
be back for a couple hours later.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll see you around.
I'll be probably in a meeting by the time you're streaming, so
Okay.
I don't know. It depends if
Cool.
you're going for like 5-6 hours.
I
Like
was saying if you go on for like 3 or 4 hours, I might hop on the last hour.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I will
same.
say this: if I do another stream later, it probably will be one of the longer ones. So, but
Okay.
I do want to say thanks for coming on, and why don't you guys let everybody know where they can find your stuff? So, Frank, where can everybody find your stuff at?
Well, you can find my mini comics. They are limited artist editions, so you can find them on Etsy, Salazar Nation Comics. And I do want to emphasize that I split the profits with my co-collaborator Anna Rupp. So when you buy even one set, you're helping support two indie artists. So if you
That's
care
awesome.
about that, buy something. And you can also check out Salazar Art Nation on YouTube and on Instagram. That's where I post regularly. I also have a Facebook channel. You can just look up my name, not channel, but Facebook account. You just look up my name. You want to message me on there, you can. And I also post on Twitter once in a while, and that's Nation Salazar.
Got it.
And that's where you can find most of my stuff. And check out
Oh,
my Linktree store. You can find that's where you'll find the Etsy and my Gumroad, where I put the digital versions of these comics. So check it out.
awesome. And Jake, where can everybody check out your comics and read your comics as well?
You can get in contact with me on Twitter at JTwister with a V, not a W. And you can read my comic Bone Meal for free on newgrounds.com with the same handle. It's updating every Friday at 3 p.m. CT. So
Awesome.
be sure to check out the latest upload this Friday.
Awesome. And I feel like Jake, this is a rarity because usually Jake is the king of the night gang, and we're actually doing this like midday, at least on my end. So
Someday.
So yeah, it's been a pleasure. Fun having you back on too, and thanks to everybody who joined in the chats. Gary just hopped on. That's why we're leaving, because we dislike
That's
you,
why we're
Gary,
leaving, because
and we
Gary's
want you
here.
to quit comics. No, I'm just kidding. Like, no, actually, you guys should check out the comics of everybody in the chats, including the brilliant Gary Hodges, who
And
does
check
Dinosaurs
out Adam
versus
Lore's
Mars
channel,
Bats.
because he'll stream also for a few hours, and sometimes he'll restream. You'll
Hell yeah.
listen to some of these.
Yeah, and Adam.
And he doesn't always leave them
interesting.
on, so you gotta get on there while you can.
I love it. All right. But Gary's like, I got the hint, guys. Thanks. No. But anyhow, so just for that diss that I made at the end on Gary, you guys should go buy Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. I believe the coloring book is still available, and he's going to be reprinting
art
those
book.
issues. And that he is one of the few, like, there's a certain amount of creators within our circle that put out stuff, and I look at it and go, gosh, that's amazing. And he's one of them. So, all right.
Okay.
And also he should quit comics. So anyhow, I will see you guys.
Is that amazing?
All right. Have a good night, guys. Or actually, I'll probably see you later on the next stream. Okay.
All right. See you later.
We're seeing you.